Hi, welcome everyone. First question, of course, is make sure that you're in the place where you wanted to be. This is devices and enterprise application deployment. And as a newer MCSE, so it's the modern MCSE, so the solutions expert. And that's a go? Yes? So my first question is going to be to you, are you near the beginning of this certification journey or near the end for taking these specific exams? Because this presentation will be totally different if you've all been cramming day by day, night by night, and you've come to here to get your half-price exams, and you're almost done. Or if you want to get oriented to what you need to do to approach these exams, I'm going to try and talk you into taking them anyway, even if you're at the beginning. So could I have a show of hands who's near the beginning of this? Okay. And now who's near the end? You have to, everyone has to raise your hand once or you're in the wrong place. Okay, so this sounds like you're approaching this from the beginning. Let's try to make sure that we don't lose anyone here. So we're a small enough group, you can interact. Please do not drive us off topic. That's all I ask. Keep us totally focused on topic, and don't just talk to hear yourself talk, but speak to something that would help us all get through these exams, because we're all in this together, you bet. So here we go. This is an exam prep for the MCSE in Enterprise Devices and Deployment. Translated, let's just say it means deploying applications, deploying operating systems to devices, and then controlling those devices, be they full computers or third-party, Android, iOS, Windows Phone, and so on. And that will be done. The exam coverage could include group policy, but the main product tools will be System Center Configuration Manager, Microsoft Intune, the cloud-based service you've been hearing a lot about, and the deployment toolkit, and then other operating system features built into Windows Server 2012 R2, such as Windows Deployment Services and other, actually, subsets of many of these tools are the same. The Windows ADK, Windows 8.1 Assessment and Deployment Toolkit. So if all that sounds like something you've heard of, something you would deal with, that's, loosely speaking, what we're going to be covering today. And of course, we'll try and help you get through the exam. Anybody sat these exams before? Has anyone been there? Okay, good. So you know, if you've seen the exam, please don't shout out. Don't anyone shout out answers, please. We want to make sure that we learn this material, not just hear somebody shout it out. But of course, don't shout anything that is literally on the exam if you are able to memorize such things. I'm either cursed or gifted that I can't memorize, so I'm going to only be able to paraphrase the things. Okay, who am I? Mark Wheatley, Infront Consulting Group. We have a booth on the floor. You can certainly visit us, but let's move right into the topic. So we hope that we see all of you, and maybe even some more, because there is room. Call your friends in for the second part. Part 1 and Part 2, we are not covering one exam in Part 1 and the other exam in Part 2. The reason being that we have had previous feedback in TechEd and from Microsoft Management Summit and other conferences that we don't want to be totally rushed, and we don't just want to pack in one exam, one question, one exam, one question kind of thing. These are all related. Sir?
So when is Part 2? Do you have power to that?
Part 2 is in this room at 10:45. Our session ends at 10:15. Okay, so it'll be a 30-minute break. So Part 1 and Part 2 are part of a continuum. We are covering objectives from each exam because it's fair game when you take either exam to see something related to the other exam. And this gets into extreme detail of how exams are made, but distractor items that are your incorrect answers on one exam could be the correct answers on the other exam. That's why it's very important that for a solutions expert, the solutions approach to this discipline is not to be micromanaging, micro-focused on particular product, particular action. The solutions approach is to cover being able to deliver something to a customer and be successful at it. So we'll cover both aspects of that there. I've been doing this since, certified since 1995, so I'm now a 20-year MCT. And I didn't have gray hair at the beginning. Several people recognize that and tell me that. So where do you go? How do you start to prepare for any exam, including these? Question? Where would you go? You want to take this exam? Somebody's mentioned it. The internet. Do you go anywhere on the internet? Do you go to the dark side? Let's just pick one of these. And what you would do is go to the one single authoritative place that describes what's on the exam. And that is the Microsoft Training and Certification site. And you look at the exam. Now, this is our 796 exam. I have the 795 in the window right next to it, so I can easily go over and show you that too. But the format is the same. You can ignore the price this week only, $75, so make sure you take advantage of that. You can register just across the room, and I'm going to try and talk you into it. Having done this for 20 years, my primary mistake was to overstudy and fear failure the first time. You will greatly increase your efficiency of time if you take the exam, feel what's on it, know better direction of what to study, come back, and you have a free retake until May 31st. So not only is it half price, but you have a retake. So I strongly encourage you to take advantage of that. Do that here at Microsoft Ignite, and highly recommend it. Now, how do you find out what's on the exam? You look at the skills being measured. And you can read these through, but what I've done is copy them all into a Word document. And in that Word document, I have able to do word counts. So you just do a copy and paste, and then you study each one of these items. And you be careful that you do everything that's in there, not just know what the words mean. So we won't be able to do everything in here, of course, during this session. But we will be able to hopefully direct you and help you not only get started, but possibly even succeed there. All right? So the words deploying and managing are key action words. To deploy and to manage, do not think that manage is only the 696 exam. Do not think deploy is only the 695 exam. Each one is in each. And I've done that with a little simple Excel spreadsheet to study where these words correlate in each exam. Let's see. Yeah, go for it. I think I described all of that here. And then I have, this is a simple word search study across both exams, since we encourage you to study both of them concurrently, because it is one certification, one outcome of competency that is desired from this new MCSE, this solutions expert. Notice that configuring, while not exactly, they don't take the left and right to be correlated, but actions are those verbs, and the tools and objects that you perform any of these actions on are listed on the right-hand column. And so hopefully everything here, if you want us to define anything, make sure that you ask about those now. So deploying virtual applications, planning for and installing virtual applications, preparing the environment for virtual applications. This, and I've only made this myself from simply the objectives, the domain, objective domain, and the functional groups that are available for every exam. And I can tell you for the last 20 years, that has been the most honest and direct way to prepare for any exam. Go by the stated Microsoft exams, because that's how they prepare and build them. Okay? Anyone have any question around any of these words? Hopefully the ones on the right. But you actually have to do and practice these, unless you're really good at taking tests. And by the way, we'll get into the types of questions. But has everyone seen or do you know what a case study question from Microsoft looks like? Huge amounts of text, many tabbed dialog places. The tabs will say things like stated outcomes, problems, background information, and then maybe some specific technical pieces that are desired. If you read all of that in detail before looking at the questions, you may run out of time. So you'll have to practice at how you do those case studies. By the way, the same page that I was just on does describe those question types. So if you're on a Microsoft exam preparation page, you can go down to exam types, question types. The dominant type will be case study for these solutions expert exams, and multiple choice best answer, which means don't grab the first one that looks right. Multiple choice best answer means all of them are pretty good. One is better than the rest. So resist saying, got it, I know that from last week. Poof. Read all the choices as you go through. All right? So we mentioned the dominant tools there are going to be System Center Configuration Manager. But now we've moved from a few years ago where we defined a zero-touch deployment as only meaning Configuration Manager. Zero-touch has always been possible without Config Manager as well, but it's only recently that we're admitting it. And these exams and this certification has come back to the real truth. So zero-touch can be done with the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit or Config Manager. Do not think that light touch means MDT and zero touch means Config Manager, because that's what I thought for about 6 years of Windows Vista and Windows 7 preparation with these tools. Okay? Does anyone want to ask about any one of these items? This is a slide for a Microsoft Virtual Academy, which I hope you've heard of, because you should, after this week, definitely take time to go through the best sessions that I've picked out for you to prepare you for this. You all use the Microsoft Virtual Academy instead of watching TV? Good, good. So we don't want to make this put you to sleep so early in the morning with a bunch of alphabet soup, but all of these are tools and subsets that do feature on the exam, I can promise you. Sure.
What is WC?
This is 2 words, so it's Windows System Image Manager, which is never a very good name for it. It's the tool that you use to prepare answer files. Answer files to a setup type tool. So these tools will come in the ADK, which isn't covered. Oh, yes, it is. The Windows ADK, so the deployment, assessment and deployment toolkit for 8.1. And the Wake is its former name, the Windows Automated Installation Kit. You should know them both because the Wake is built for Windows 7 and the ADK for Windows 8 and 8.1. Okay? And the ADK is under the surface whenever you install Config Manager and MDT. They both leverage it. So that's a very common subset of tools. The ADK is where you get Windows PE and where you get DISM. And Deployment Imaging Service and Management tool is one of those drill downs we'll do into a deep dive for details. Okay, now this is actually a screenshot from the Microsoft Virtual Academy Jumpstart called Windows 8.1 Deployment Jumpstart. It's freely available. You can now watch it. It's available on demand. MicrosoftVirtualAcademy.com. Sign in and do it, sir.
Will the exam focus on the most recent versions of these, or will they go back as well?
Good question. They are focusing on the Windows 8.1. So I know Windows 10 is wonderful and all the sessions you're going to. I'm not going to say don't go there. But no Windows 10 will be mentioned, featured, or in any way shown on these exams. These exams went live in January. Will they go back to XP?
No, I was actually speaking more to the tools themselves. Like Config Manager, are they going to stick with 2012?
Yes.
Go back to 2007?
No, and someone asks, will they be doing a migration? Your scenario questions might say you have Config Manager 2007 and your environment, and that might be a distractor or it might be part of your solution. But you will not have to know older versions. You do need to know something about them because you need to contrast. Believe it or not, XP still shows up on the exam. Not how do you configure XP, how do you migrate from XP to 8.1? Is that a solutions expert requirement even today? Yes, and as long as it is, we'll definitely want to have an exam that measures that. Okay? Cool. We have an app, it's a Windows 8 application that you can load from the Windows Store, and this is just a screenshot from that. And we're taking a small subset of that. Oh, sorry, I just blanked again. Sonia. Is that right? So do you have that picture? Yeah, she's got a fold-out there that shows a big map of all your certification paths. Totally easy to remember, though. The very one at the very top is this one. It's also the very newest. So where did we get these now? Oh, you get this from the App Store, but where do we get this list of objectives? These are exactly the same as? Exactly, from the website when you're looking for how to study for any particular exam. Okay, including these two. Here they are again. So we're giving you multiple doses of this. Here are the tasks. These are called the functional groups. Please do not put too much weight onto the percentages. The percentages will not be entirely true for you because each person gets a different subset of questions when you take this exam. Some will be more difficult, and those are also normalized and balanced. Some will be more easy. So your score is different for a set of difficult questions than easy questions. So it's balanced out to be fair. But what I'm saying is do not study twice as hard for something that's 20% as something that's 10%. That is not, it's going to vary, and the topics are the main things. So implement really means do it. Try it out, build a lab, even do it in real life if you possibly can. All right? The 695 is most for people who deploy operating systems. So if you deploy onto bare metal machines, and this is Windows only, by the way, managing enterprise devices and apps does not say Windows on it, does it? If we go back and look, what do we deploy? We deploy Windows, but we manage Windows and everything else. So there's a key right away. Are you already managing Android and Apple devices? If so, maybe you should take this one first. And so the managing part deploys, as you can see right away, applications, not really full operating systems. So in order to separate a little bit out in your minds which exam does what, because you can only take one exam at a time, this will help you. Okay? And we're a small enough group, you can jump in with any relevant questions just as you've been doing so far. That's perfect. Yeah. You'll see it again and again. It's not the first time. And the only reason it's a larger font is there are fewer groups of a larger percentage. Now, each one of these, of course, is broken out into exact objectives underneath it. These are just the functional groups and the larger categories. Okay, so if this sounds like what you're after, what you're going to be rated on the job or the job that you're looking to apply for, do it. What we're going to do is get into some of the details now. Plan for and implement. So those are the verbs, the action verbs. And we're looking at, in no special order, and we're really thinking Windows XP applications that fail on Windows 8.1. And we've really been working with this ever since these tools came out in the Vista days, right after XP, when the major architectural change was. Right? Where do you get the application compatibility toolkit? Where does it come from? Yeah, ADK, free download. Okay, so we are being tested. It used to be, I don't know if you guys are burdened with the past like I am, but it used to be you would never see a non-product question on there on the exams. It was only product-oriented. This is solution-oriented. MCSE means Microsoft Certified Solutions Expert, and it is not bound by product limits. Free things are definitely on the exam, like these. So here's the sample question, and rather than just jump out at this, and then, gosh, this is just someone decided on this, so there's not a lot of technical background we can cover for this question. But proof of concept lab, you want to do remote desktop, and you want to do remote apps, and you want to have the apps execute on remote servers. And the client access licenses are required by Microsoft, but you have a grace period until you have to set up a licensing server and measure those. Anyone know how long that period is? 60? Yeah. And this is simply something it's not really, not a fair question, is it? But you'll see it. It is 120 days, and that's just the way it is. So with all of these questions, the same routine we're going to go through is make sure you know the configuration and licensing rules around a lot of these components. Remote desktop especially, because they seem to be a little different in that aspect.
Don't temporary RDS-CALs end after 90 days, on the 89th day?
I didn't think so. I thought it was you're able to use the service for 120 days and then you get those alarms. That's the way I've seen it in a lab.
I would say a typical RDS-CAL expires on the 89th day if it doesn't check in. So.
Oh, that's a different thing. This will be when you're required to start measuring licensing. So that might be another nice question to ask on the exam. So you're thinking of what questions to ask that are related to anything we do is helping you prepare immensely. Good job. Here's another question on the same functional group. I'll introduce a new functional group and a new type of exam objective when that switches. But right now, this is the same idea. And everyone can see, right, from the back of the room? Fine, this font is big enough. Great. All right. So we're looking at application compatibility. We have an application compatibility problem that has been flagged. What do you do? What is your approach? Again, let's look through each one. Would we send an APM alert, which is not related to a topic that we deal with here? Application performance monitoring is a detailed health monitoring aspect of System Center Operations Manager. B, use the ACT. And remember, we will repeat this because some of you are new to it. Application Compatibility Toolkit from the Assessment and Deployment Kit to deploy a shim database, but they're now calling it Compatibility Fix. And use the shim database installer. Anyone know what a shim is? Are you in carpentry or metals or anything? Shim is something that takes up a gap, and it's a software. It's the software piece that is fit in. Well, that's exactly what they're going on, but now they're calling it a compatibility fix or shim. Because I spent the longest time on that, you might guess there. The choice C, I think that's a deprecated tool, but you can edit a Microsoft installer file to make changes with the Orca kit if you can still find it. D, use the migration tools in Config Manager console to remediate. And those don't remediate applications. They take you from Config Manager 2007 to 2012. And someone here already was asking me about that. Not a part of these exams at all, so don't have to worry about migrations. All right, so what do you think? And what's the takeaway? And I'm being a little obvious here because what we're trying to do is help train you more than we are trying to give you a lookalike exam. This gets you thinking right and gets you aimed at using the tools. Right? So know how you do compatibility remediation of essentially Windows XP era applications that are still mission critical. Before they're rewritten, go for it. All right. Another one, same topic. You'll see new functional group jump up if we change. By the way, desktop support technicians, enterprise desktop support technicians, are maybe close job roles to this new certification. There isn't an exact mapping, but does anyone else have another term for maybe your own job roles that have to do with deployment and management of enterprise devices and apps?
Call it end-user infrastructure.
Infrastructure, definitely key. End-user infrastructure, very good. But traditionally, desktop support technician has been sort of a Windows 7 era time frame accepted name of a job role. These can vary tremendously, but it helps you focus on, is this for you or not? Sorry, back to the question. So the left one is the tool, and the right one is use. Left one's the technology, right one's the tool. So on the start screen user interface technology, use the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Tool, MAP. B, use the approach the technology of deprecated operating system features. And you all know what the word deprecated means. I can't swear that appears on the exam, but throughout Microsoft, they use that in a way no one else does. To deprecate. And by the way, all the technical writers in their dictionary has depreciate. So they call them depreciated features by mistake, which isn't too far off. To deprecate in Microsoftese is to mark a feature for deletion, a function or feature to be deleted in the future. Sometimes if they say deprecated, it means no longer supported now, but usually it means it still exists, but don't count on it being around for the future. So deprecated operating system features, and use the Application Compatibility Toolkit. What's UAC? You can shout that one out. Yeah, so the feature that was introduced and that drove everyone crazy from XP to Vista timeframe, and which now is still in clear existence because it's part of the architecture. But the user account control issues definitely break older applications. Many of them use the ACT for that. And then how about D, antivirus software, use the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Tool and Configuration Manager against that technology to help identify compatibility issues. Which of these sound reasonable to you? B, so deprecated OS features. You would use the Application Compatibility Toolkit for operating system features? Well, I'm just being mean to you. Yeah. So, so take a look at both of these. The Application Compatibility Toolkit, really the user account control is an operating system feature that it hurts some applications. So definitely you're onto it there. All right, maybe we've done enough and should shift to another maybe functional group, or at least another different application. Deployment. So this is maybe between operating system and application, but definitely called an application. How do you deploy Office 2013? And don't just think of Office 2013 Professional Plus. Think of Office Pro Plus with Office 365 and click to run. So MSI, Microsoft Installer, you have to know that. You also have to know the click to run. And those are in those functional objectives. I'm not making them up. That helps you study. Okay, so any questions about these before we hit the next sample question?
Are they going to touch on KMS?
Yes. We have several questions coming up, but is licensing and what types of keys and what types of licensing you have, is that a part of deployment and management? Absolutely. So I'll leave off discussion of that one until we get there, because we do have some good sample questions. And I don't like those. Those are hard. Okay, so how about the fine print there? Under Office 2013, and this is part and parcel of Office 2013, doing light touch, rearming of it, and providing updates. Definitely in scope. Here we go. Sample question. Which of these two methods can you deploy an MSI file for Office 2013? And I said could, not should. We'll get into that after you think about this. Can Microsoft Intune deploy Office 2013? And we strongly, okay. Microsoft Intune will be covered on the 696 exam, but it's deployment of a big application. Okay, so that's the managing devices. Can you use the AppWiz Server Edition? What is it anyway? I'm bad, I made that one up. Now, that's called an implausible distractor, and you will not see those on real Microsoft exams. So what my general takeaway, this is a bad example for my part, is everything you see that's a distractor item, i.e. wrong answer, is probably going to be the right answer for another question not asked. So do not discount those when you take your regular exams. If you're totally confused, remember as much as you can, unlike me who can't remember details like that, and that helps you study. So software installation and a group policy logon script. Have you ever installed Office in older days through a logon script? How long did it take? Disaster. Office deployment tool, ODT. Careful. Using an MSI, Microsoft Installer file, there is an OCT. That is also on the exam, but that is not what the question says. This says the ODT for a click-to-run deployment. So make sure you know those silly little differences. OCT is used for the same general purpose as an ODT, but they're used for different types of Office installation. A group policy object in a startup script. Boot the computer, run group policy, install Office, then log on. Any guesses? C, D. Well, let's cover here. Sometimes I give you a knowledge-based article to look at, because I'm not saying that you can't do this with some other methods, but the two Microsoft-supported ways of installing Office 2013 Professional Plus are, I'm not saying you should, because there are a lot of bits that could be plumbing through Microsoft Intune. Remember, that is coming from a cloud over the internet and a cloud distribution point probably. And that's, you can do it if you have to. If your clients can't get to another distribution point, that can work. Okay, and then also started a group policy object software installation in a startup script though. All right, another group here. And if you want to probe any of these, do so, but we have to be somewhat quick, just checking on the time here and checking on the slide number. Cool. All right, deploying applications using Configuration Manager. This is mostly on the 696 exam. Application deployment. 695, operating system deployment, when we're talking deployment. Okay, so deployment types. Have you all used Config Manager 2012? Because there's a super difference between that and the previous version. And the difference is what's called, confusingly, applications versus packages and programs. So deployment types will be application deployment types. BYOD these days, the bring your own device, talked about greatly in keynotes and in the modern workplace, so to speak. We decide which devices are used most often by a user. We call them primary devices, and that link or relationship of device object to user object plays a huge part in deployment. So you must understand how you can configure the user device affinity and how you make that contingent on how you deploy applications. Do we want to deploy these to just the user's primary device because we expect them to be there tomorrow? Or do we know that they're not going to be here tomorrow and we want it to go away? Okay, requirements, and these will be, this is essentially the newer application part of this. How do we manage the software library and the application catalog? Self-service IT is being approached all over the place by different tools, products, feature sets. This is the config manager way of approaching IT self-service for users and applications. Web-based services, web-based service and a tool. Okay, so right there in the config manager user interface. Here we go. Sample question. Silently without any user input may sound kind of redundant. We mean a hands-off, zero-touch application. And what scenarios, in general, would you pick to have a silent install? This is config manager lingo. Required to a user collection yesterday. So our deadline has passed to a user collection. And did you say E? Yeah. Deadline also passed there. Mandatory is not a named, I get the idea, but it's not what we call it in config manager. And available is not required. Yeah, you get to choose, and we'll get into more questions that involve pieces that involve user choices that you can do in other deployments. Okay, so definitely practice this. Just a note now and then, just do not ever think that deployment means only the 695 exam and management only means the 696. This is solution-based, as we've been saying all along. Okay, another group, another objective, planning. Planning strategies. Keep in mind, I'm pretty sure you'll have this because both exams look this way to me, but you will start off with 3 scenario questions that have different numbers of questions in each one. If you're at all worried about your time, please keep track of the number of questions. 50 total questions on your exam, but the scenario questions, you cannot go back after you've finished each scenario. So 1 scenario, 2 scenario, 3 scenario of between 5 and 9 questions each, but please keep track of those on your scratch pad. Then you'll have a larger batch of multiple choice. I'm not saying this will be the way it is for you, but because it was that way for me on each exam, can kind of generalize. Don't think you're at the end when you get to the end of the multiple choice questions, because that's what I thought in each time. And then they hit you with another scenario question. You go, oh, more reading. So keep track of your numbers.
Are all scenarios, like a particular scenarios, are they grouped together? So it's like 1 through 10 will be 1 scenario?
Yes, questions 1 through 10, maybe 1 through 9, 1 scenario. Questions 11 through 15, another scenario.
Do you get a notice when you're about to leave the scenario?
Yes.
Okay.
You are told you cannot go back. You can review these right now, but if you spend a great amount of time reviewing, as you would in the end of the exam, you can't go back and look at those scenarios again.
So you have multiple questions on a scenario, and then once you exit the scenario, you cannot go back, but within the scenario, you can navigate the questions.
Yes. That's why I'm saying keep a little tick mark. It's my suggestion only. I've never seen anyone else say that. But you'll know if you have, how many questions you have left. And if it says multiple choice, 1 of 18, and you know that when you get to 18, there's still 5 more questions, that means you're going to get hit at the end, as most people do with another scenario question. Sorry, back to this one. So any questions about what this involves? Scenarios. You have two companies with a wide area network slow link in between, or two companies with a fast connection. There's big difference in how you would answer the questions that come up. Okay? These are definitely the 696, because when we have a third party and Windows Phone, we are talking about the 696 exam. All right, sample question. You're using the Exchange Server connector, in other words, Exchange ActiveSync. What mobile device management capabilities could they get if they moved off of Exchange ActiveSync, which is considered legacy, but which you will still find on the exam as a part of scenarios? People are still using it, and it's relevant and fair to ask a question on it. But we're saying if they move to Intune, what are they going to gain? B, hardware inventory, and D, deploy and manage applications. Any other questions or any other guesses? You want remote wipe in any tool. So the inventory you do, because anything that can do a WMI query. So
You could do C with Exchange.
yeah.
Remote wipe's always good.
Right, so that's why it's not a part of the answer. What would you gain by moving off of Exchange and onto Intune? So you would not gain remote wipe, you've got it.
You do A.
Yeah.
Should be on the side.
We're saying what do you gain? What do you not have in Exchange ActiveSync that you get in Intune? And that helps you work with Microsoft Intune. Please do not be disturbed. I don't know when and if they change that, because when you pass an exam, you're not supposed to take it again, and that's probably now being enforced properly with Pearson VUE. Historically, don't think it was that way. It may be called Windows Intune. No difference. Please just note that was a branding change. It used to be called Windows Azure, too, Microsoft Azure. So same thing. Don't let that throw you. Another question. What do you first do to deploy your own company's line of business Windows Store app to Windows 8.1 computers? Do you need to add that app to the Windows Store? Do you need to package it up for Config Manager in the deployment type .appv? Do you need to package it up as an MSI or an EXE? Or just digitally sign it? Signatures are absolutely necessary for all Windows Store apps. Sideloading is a deployment mechanism that you should look into. And sideloading, of course, did not appear until Windows 8 came on the scene. So sideloading apps. There's the same kind of idea before, where you have to trust it, essentially. And we have to have a trusted certificate. Okay? Manage devices with Intune. And I'll just call it Intune. It is Microsoft Intune correctly, but as I said, don't be disturbed if it says Windows Intune on your exam. What should you be able to do? You should understand that Microsoft Intune has a cloud-only function with no connection to Config Manager. And for mobile device management only, you can throw a big switch inside Intune that says, do all mobile device management through a subscription from the Microsoft Cloud, Intune, into your on-premises or wherever Config Manager through the subscription. Okay? So that we call integration, and that involves a subscription, it involves certificates, and you should really try this out and also go to one of the MVA Academy slides that I'll have coming up here. All right? So if you've not worked with Microsoft Intune, get a 30-day free subscription and work it as hard as you can, and then get another 30-day free subscription with another user account if you don't want to pay. But I mean, you're learning, right? So do it. I don't think that's stealing. Okay. Question. Which devices can be managed by Intune? MacBooks, Windows RT, Surface Pros, Windows 8 Pros, Windows Pro 8, Windows Phone 8, sorry, or Red Hat, Linux 6 or 7. What can we do with Intune? All but A? All but F. Right. Be careful. While there's a lot of movement to manage Mac operating systems on Macintosh computers and Linux machines as well through Config Manager, those are not managed through Intune. There is no, you have to have an agent running that communicates cloud-wise on Intune, and we don't have that there. So for the phone, for RT, of course, Surface Pro 3, we assume running Windows 8. I've never tried installing XP on a Surface Pro 3, and neither should you. What a waste. Okay, so any questions about that? What if I had said Windows 7 Home Edition? It'll show up. You can force it, but it will be not licensed, and it's frowned upon. If it's not supported, I wouldn't list it ever as a correct answer. Okay, another one, cloud-delivered capabilities. Which of them are through Microsoft Intune? Can you synchronize Asset Intelligence Catalog information with clients? So take that feature that's about 12 years old now for all the hardware and software known on planet Earth that Microsoft maintains. It was their first cloud-based service, Asset Intelligence. Anyone remember that way back in? Yeah, very early 2007, even before, because it was the era of MOM 2005 that this started. So it's 10 years old, at least 10 or 12. Anyway, hardware and software, inventory. Can you do malware protection? Anti-malware, that is. Can you do health monitoring? So is your application performing okay, and how's it doing? Can you do some kind of reporting? So some kind of time trend analysis reporting. And can you support most recent Windows clients and servers? Which ones would you choose here?
When it says cloud delivered on the test, will that mean not hybrid, just Intune by itself?
Good point. Cloud delivered can mean both Config Manager if you have a cloud distribution point, and this is all using Microsoft Azure storage, whether it is Intune cloud only or Config Manager integrated with Intune. So there will be cloud portions of each, right? Unless you have a completely on-premises Config Manager server with no Intune subscription and no cloud distribution point. If that's part of the scenario, then you clearly have no cloud component. Anyway, you wanted to just go through the answers? Are you guys? You're not asleep, right? You're not getting dazed? Because if you sometimes do these things and you kind of go nod, don't nod. Drink more coffee or something to make yourself, psych yourself up to take the exam. Do it. Do not fear failure, and know what to study, and then come back. Try again for free. All right. So the Asset Intelligence is great, but that is Config Manager only. It does not. It's a cloud service, and if it's already a cloud service, and Intune's another cloud service, they often, you can't kind of graft them together yet. I don't think there are plans for that. So definitely you can do inventory, both hardware and software. I don't want to display my current Intune environment because all my colleagues have some pretty weird stuff on their machines. And it all shows up in the reports from cloud-only Intune or integrated. But there are separate reports in cloud-only Intune. Health monitoring. This has actually an operations manager type. I shouldn't call it that because you don't need any license for it, but it has a health service running. That's one of the running services you get with Intune. Okay.
What are they considering recent Windows client? Are they talking 10 or?
Oh, now that F is wrong, not because recent is ambiguous, but if I say, by the way, you can make Intune succeed on Windows XP, Service Pack 3, and forward. So it goes back a long way, even though XP is not supported. You cannot use Intune on servers. And please note that is a Microsoft decision. It will not install, and it will not perform if you cheat and force it to install. If you hack these things, which is fun, but wastes a lot of your time. You can always try. You can also no longer dual client a machine. I'll pretend I never did this, but at one time, you could have both the config manager and Intune, which was never supported, and now that's blocked very effectively. So you have either a machine is managed through Intune or through config manager, not both at once.
It's hard to go back.
Hard to go back from.
Change your mind from if you decide to manage with config manager or Intune. They kind of make you go one way or the other.
Oh, it's not hard to go back, though. You can uninstall the Intune. You do have to, well, there are various tricks, but if you are patient enough to wait 1 hour, sometimes more than 1 hour, you can always retire, is their word, and Intune will quietly uninstall itself, just not immediately. And then you can discover with config manager, and you can also do a CCM setup / uninstall to immediately uninstall a config manager agent. So you can go back and forth.
Is there any way to manage both products from one interface? Or are they
Yes and no. Through mobile devices, you have a single way to manage them, and that is through Config Manager Console. But if you have cloud-only computer clients, you must use the cloud-only console because they don't have a Config Manager client or agent running on them. So it's not exactly a single pane of glass for those kinds of scenarios. Good question. Okay, so you have the basic features which you can always read about and work with. Another one, where can you install the connector? And this is going to be how you take the cloud servicing of your maybe remote client managed machines and maybe mobile devices as well that never contact your corporate network. They are always out there on the internet somewhere. Where is it you plug that in? Okay, C, primary site server in a standalone hierarchy, or I was going to say Exchange CAS, but that will stand in config manager lingo for a central admin server, so central administrative server. And someone's been doing their work, because right on there. Okay, so the Intune connector has to be plugged into a high spot in your management hierarchy. Think about that. The top or root will be a primary site server if there's nothing above it. If there are primary site servers with a central administration site, the central administration site is the one that should be used, and then it is not a standalone hierarchy. Great. Installing the connector is fun. Windows Deployment Services. So this might be a little shock because Windows Deployment Services is often wrapped around by friendlier tools. But it can be used very well all by itself, and it is tested upon. So if you have nothing but Windows Deployment Services and images, WIM images, that's an acceptable way of deploying. And it works, and it's tested upon, and you have a little bit more work to do. Okay, so adding images, scheduling, multicast versus unicast. These are all fair game. Okay, you have good performance using WDS until you start to wipe and load laptop devices that have legacy NICs. What can you do? Seems like I missed a period there. And in fact, why does this happen? Multicast. So you're trying to all synchronize with a multicast. Can you go faster than the slowest consumer of that multicast? No, you'd overrun them and cause them to fail. So the squeaky wheel gets the grease, should we say? The slowest machine is going to determine the multicast speed of all. So what can you do if this happens? Yeah, A or B, but notice we have a single set of devices or NICs. You could actually have a slow, medium, and fast, but we really just need two groups of devices. Put those legacy NIC laptops into another session, and you configure that in Windows Deployment Services. Actually, within Config Manager as well. So in the tab. Okay. Oh, another one. Automate it. Make it as hands-off as you can. What is going to help you automate Windows Deployment Services? And by the way, most questions will say choose 2 or choose 3. There are still a few questions that say choose all that apply. Not too many, but those obviously are harder. If you choose 2, then you can use your powers of ruling out the ones that look slightly implausible to you. Remember, with the command line tool for Windows Deployment Services is still heavily used. Now we have a PowerShell module, as we do for almost everything. Please, PowerShell, you cannot ignore PowerShell. It's totally on the exam where it's needed here. Just focused on our exam topics. So you do have to know the subset of PowerShell that gets you started, that loads a module, and your basic verb hyphen singular noun. You should know some of the syntax, especially the first parts of the noun, which identify the module, that you can use to possibly rule out an implausible answer. Okay? So light touch and zero touch. It used to be we would just call Windows Deployment Services by itself light touch, but you can do a completely hands-off approach and deployment. And so we now acknowledge that. All right, how are we doing with time? How are we doing with slide number? Not bad. The Microsoft Deployment Toolkit. This has gone through several versions. It was written by Mike Niehaus, who is here and speaking. And if you ever get a chance to see Mike Niehaus, N-I-H-A-U-S, or Johan Ardwidmark, make sure you look at those guys. Those are two super experts. But this is now, it sort of was pushed aside for a while in history and always been deemed to be a light touch. And Config Manager, we have no use for this ever. The Microsoft official training would leave it out in former classes. Now, in 6.9.5, we acknowledge that people do it, they use it, it's good, it's very useful, it's in fact better. You may have to work a little harder at it, but you get what you work at. So MDT is in scope for this exam. Microsoft Deployment Toolkit 2012 Update 1 or 2012-13. It's written to 2012-13, but each one is close enough that you'll be able to pass the exam. When did they introduce the MDT for PowerShell? Was it in 2012 Update 1 or 2013? I forgot.
2012.
So good. So what I said is still true then, because you should know that there is an MDT PowerShell module. It is no longer a snap-in. So previously it was the BDD, Business Desktop Deployment Snap-in for PowerShell. And when you nod, be aware that question writers from Microsoft love to ask you things that were correct a while ago and have been changed. Why are they punishing people who are good at this a few years back? It means it's just easy to write that kind of test question, huh? Okay, let's go. What do you need in order to configure it, to integrate? What do you need to do? What do you need to supply to manage the connection? To get Microsoft Deployment Toolkit to provide additional services to Config Manager 2012, to allow that integration. Yeah, you need to provide to MDT. Oh, sorry, I might screw up another question if I say that. So, server name and site code of the Config Manager site server. Okay? Site of the Config Manager site. So all you need is a site server name and a site code. The three-digit, three-character identifier, which is still with us, three characters. How about virtual applications? We mean AppV, formerly SoftGrid, Softricity, formerly it's an acquisition, and definitely some people, if this is new to you, look into it, because this is essentially what Click to Run Office is doing. Microsoft is taking these technologies and building them into a lot of different places that just make sense. So how AppV works, it will open a lot of new doors for you. Okay, sequencing. You don't have to do that to succeed, but sequencing is on the exam. Not how to do it, but you have to know that in preparation of a virtual application, sequencing it is their term for hitting record, running the application, watching how it piles into memory, capturing what it does, saving it off to a package format. That's greatly abbreviated, but definitely sequencing. The sequencer is installed on typically a very clean client. Who's used AppV? Just less than half? Okay. So definitely in scope. Manage AppV environments, and including the configuration and some of the metering and monitoring. And let's go. What do we mean? How does this take form in questions? All right. You try to deploy a virtual app, and you should know that the virtual application just can't live on its own on a Microsoft operating system. I was guessing that would be built in to around the Windows 10 timeframe. I haven't really verified or checked on that. But right now you need to have the AppV client to house this virtual application, and that's not built into the operating system. So you need the AppV, and we're up to version 5. That's correct. So should we deploy this client software first, or should we configure virtual apps software dependencies to name the client, or should we add a requirement of the virtual apps to have only use if the primary device equals false? How's that sound? D doesn't, yeah, exactly. D doesn't get to the requirement, but it's still a smart thing to do. So be prepared. Read on the real exam, read all of these answer choices carefully. Don't just grab at the first one and leap to the next question. Choose the best answer. So you could succeed by A. But should you? Are you going to deploy the virtual application? It says to certain Config Manager clients. That way you have a deployment of something that will never get any use to all the systems. So it will work, but it's overkill and waste. The smart way is to use that application dependency feature in Configuration Manager to say, is this a virtual app? All right, it has these dependencies. And when I tried that, the client actually has other dependencies. I think the C++ runtime, certain minimal version. Now you also go in and do the same thing to the client. You say this client MSI file has the dependencies of the C++, and you package that one up. So that way, whoever has it doesn't need it, works faster. Whoever needs it gets it first, and then gets the virtual app. So pretty sharp, smart way to deploy things. Planning for upgrades. How are we doing here? I'm probably, it's about halfway, so it's almost right, but I may just skip a couple of these so we make sure you get all of the best practices and best places to go for this. We will continue though, and so we hope to see you. We'll end at 10:15 in about 7 or 8 minutes, and then we'll see you at 10:45 because these types of questions will continue and be reinforced. And if we scared you away, get a friend or two to come in your place. Because we hope we didn't, this is definitely good stuff. Hey, it's the newest. Well, I'll show you. These are the newest certs, so you will be in the charter members when you pass these. All right, application upgrades. Is application upgrading part of this scene? Yes, for sure. So let's look at one more question, and then we'll skip to the halfway point, and then I'll have more time in the second group to go over those. All right. Boss says, stop deploying this application. We've got a replacement that we want to use instead of it. But we don't want to kill off everyone who's now using it. That would be really disruptive. What do you do? This is in Configuration Manager. A sounds nice. Beware of choosing the longest answer, which poor quality question writers often always make that the right answer. So if you've got someone who has not prepared a good test in college, the longest answer with the most technical words will be correct if you know nothing about it. Microsoft test designers are way smarter than that. And I love the ones that A, B, C, D, and E says do nothing. And really, if you understand the technology, the do nothing is right. But they want to fake you out and trick you to choose the longest one there. Anyway, to cut to the chase, you would retire it. Retiring an application will stop new deployments, but will not uninstall the application. Retirement is different from uninstalling. Let me just remember, you guys help me remember 47, slide 47. So, okay, we didn't do OSD, 2, 3. All right, we're really close. So tell you what, maybe I'll just power through, and then we won't have to remember that. Okay, so I think that was the last one. In fact, how can we be that close to exactly on time? Since this is the first time this has ever been done on the planet Earth here. So OSD, Operating System Deployment. This is a function of Configuration Manager, System Center Configuration Manager 2012 R2. So the exam is written to R2. I should have said that before. Configure both packages and applications. Applications is the new way, so spend more time on that. Configure task sequences. Task sequences also span the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit and are very important when it comes to integration. Those questions must be on the next set for session 2. Part 2 of this. Managing drivers. Device drivers are the bane of our existence and often cause us trouble. Packaging them up and deploying them correctly, once you get that right, is beautiful, and until you get that right, you suffer. Okay, so boot images, and that should probably be install images, but there are several different kinds of images, WIM files or VHD files even, and knowing the difference when you would use what kind is where we cover that. So here's a question, and then we'll get into some great tools you can use, but you better come back in 30 minutes for part 2. All right? Yeah. Do you deploy? Sorry, I should change my lingo there. What object do you deploy? I'll fix that after you go away. Yeah, the object that contains the other intelligence about what should be flung out there, the actual deployment of, is a task sequence. And the task sequence really, if you think of that, is a batch file including all the rest, to be super, super similar. So the part 2 will begin. I do want to remind you, well, I guess you have to come to part 2 to find the best, the very best sessions to go to. I'm going to just cheat a little bit and go to the end so that you don't feel too left out. But I'm going to go fast on this one and then just open it up to questions. So there are several great sessions you should go to. We are deploying Windows 8.1 as the object of this exam in terms of Windows operating systems, as well as upgrading to 8.1. We have several sessions on that. There are good hands-on labs and instructor-led labs. Watch the timing on the instructor-led labs. The hands-on labs, the HOLs, can be done anywhere. All right? Work folders. Work folders can exist with non-Microsoft clients, and that is definitely fair game for the exam. I forget which one, but it's fair game. It's there. All right? What's new with OSD? Managing content, hands-on labs. So definitely this will help you concentrate. Absolutely best resources. So Microsoft.com/learning is where all the exam preparation and exam enumeration and registration is. The app can be found just through the Windows Store. Look for Microsoft Training and Certification, and you will get the great detail of this and other roadmaps to certification. And I actually wanted to show you something else as well, which I will repeat on the second session. Microsoft Virtual Academy, and I'm going to share this with you and have more time to go over this in the second session. Please come back here for that second session. We'll pop in and show you how you navigate and which ones will get you through the exam the quickest, the exam preparation in the quickest way. Some of them are outstanding, but I have not seen this one particularly show up as on demand yet because it just happened last week, a week and a half ago. Okay? But definitely keep in tune there. So I'm going to just hit escape here and remind you that you go to Microsoft.com/learning and remind everyone that you probably can't read that, can you? So let's go up to much bigger. And note that this is where the skills being measured show up for any exam. So for this and others, the entire platform that based this presentation on comes from those skills being measured. They've always been honest. I've noticed that for 20 years. Do you have any sorts of questions about this set of brand new certifications? They are the 2 newest MCSE exams there. How about what other exams do you need to get the full MCSE? They state Windows MCSA in, Microsoft Certified Solutions Associate in Windows 8.1. And that would be the 687, 688? Yes. Yes, thank you for mentioning that because I wanted to let you know if you do not have the Windows 8 and intend just to power through to Windows 10, and by the way, if you want to take your Windows 8 here, guess what you get? This is a recent post. Holly is here this week. You get a Windows 10 exam for free if between February and May, and the end of May, you get your MCSA in Windows 8.1, and that's the 687, 688. But also in the very fine print, if you already are server certified, that's how I got through because I'm kind of putting that one client side off. If you're already MCSA in Server 2012, you may substitute that, and Microsoft is very much willing to meet you where you are and help you through. So definitely, these two exams we talked about today, plus either MCSA in Windows 8.1 or in Server 2012. Go forth and do it. And if you commit yourself this week, there's still slots left. And then see you in half an hour for the rest of the questions. But schedule your exam now so you won't chicken out. Hey, thanks, guys.